Doom, the game that defined a genre. Agenda, first person shooters, Doom history, why Doom matters, game loop lifecycle, getting started, basic workflow, WADs and mods. First person shooters, a first person shooter puts the player behind the eyes of a character, aiming and moving through a 3D feeling world in real time. If a level design fails to guide the player, clear sightlines and level geometry helps players find their way without getting lost. Almost every modern action game traces some part of its DNA back to the genre Doom helped define. Any team building a fast-paced action game studies Doom's level design and pacing as a reference point. Building the livable 3D worlds on 1993 hardware without true 3D rendering doesn't happen by accident. 2D style and Doom style game engines. A 2D style engine, like Wolfenstein 3D's renders a grid of uniform height walls using simple raycasting to fake depth. A more advanced engine like Doom's builds level from arbitrary shapes with varying floor and ceiling heights, using a binary space partition to render efficiently. 2D style Wolfenstein 3D uniform grid of walls, flat floors and ceilings. Doom's engine ID Take 1 arbitrary room shapes, varying floor ceiling heights. Problems with earlier 3D style engines. Single point of limitation. A uniform grid of walls couldn't represent stairs, bridges, or varying room heights. Levels all felt geometrically similar, since every wall met at right angles on a fixed grid. Rendering every wall in view, regardless of visibility, wasted precious CPU cycles. Hard to create tension and atmosphere without varied lighting and room shapes. Multiplayer deathmatch was difficult to support well on the hardware and networking of the time. Missed out on the more dynamic three-dimensional feeling spaces players would soon expect. The Doom engine system, level geometry, textures, and game data are packaged into WAD files distributed separately from the game executable. The IDTech-1 engine renders each level using a pre-computed binary space partition (BSP) 3 for speed. Sprites represent monsters and items as 2D images that always face the player, blended into the 3D feeling world. Other games on similar engines, Heretic, Hexen, Strife, Doom advantages. Ran smoothly on 1993-era home PCs thanks to clever, CPU-friendly rendering tricks. Supported levels with real verticality, stairs, bridges, and rooms of varying height. Shipped as shareware, letting the first episode spread for free and sell the rest. Built-in support for deathmatch, popularizing competitive multiplayer first-person shooter play. Kept game data in separate WAD files, making the game easy for players to modify. Ported to an enormous number of platforms, from PCs to calculators, over the decades since. Everything is a WAD almost. One huge benefit is that in Doom, almost all game content, levels, textures, sounds lives inside a WAD file, not the executable. IWADs hold the original game's data, while PWADs hold new levels, textures, or mods layered on top. The engine simply loads whichever WADs are given to it without needing to be recompiled. This separation of engine and content is a big reason Doom spawned such a massive modding community. Decades later, new WADs are still being released for the original 1993 engine. Line names and sectors. The walls of a level connecting 2 points and referencing the sectors on each side. Sectors. A flat area with its own floor height, ceiling height, and lightning level. A simple THING entry. Every monster, weapon, and item placed in a level is a thing with a position and type. ACS scripting, modern source ports. Later source ports added ACS, a small scripting language for custom map behavior. History. Developed by ID Software and released in December 1993, following the team's earlier hit Wolfenstein 3D. Built by programmers John Carmack and John Ramiro, with design and art from Sandy Petersen, Tom Hall, and Adrian Carmack. Distributed as shareware, letting the first 9 levels spread freely across bulletin boards and floppy disks. Source code for the engine was released publicly in 1997, kicking off decades of community source ports. Still actively played and modded today with new WADs, total conversions, and source ports released every year. Why Doom matters? Define the modern first-person shooter template still used today. Would a shareware could be a viable, wildly successful distribution model. Popularized deathmatch and competitive multiplayer first-person shooter play. Separated game content from the engine, inspiring decades of user-made mods. Open sourced the engine, kept it alive and portable across nearly every platform imaginable. A landmark in real-time 3D feeling, rendering on consumer hardware. DWAD file format. A WAD package every level, texture, and sound the engine needs into a single archive file. IWAD stands for internal WAD, the base game data required to play at all. PWAD stands for patch WAD, additional or replacement content loaded on top. Never edit an IWAD directly. Mods are built and shared as separate PWAD files. Doom game loop. Read keys, mouse input. Update game state. Think. Draw binary space partition. PSP plus sprites. Render. Flip buffer. Display. Every frame. Doom reads input. Updates every monster and object's logic. Renders the world through the BSP tree and flips the screen buffer dozens of times a second. Getting started with Doom. This leads us to the 3 things you need to play today. Source port. Pick a modern engine like GZ Doom that runs on today's hardware. IWAD. Supply the original game data file you legally own. PWAD. Add any extra levels or mods you would like to play. Basic workflow, playing, modding, and sharing. Some call play, mod, and share Doom's everyday loop within its community. Source ports run the original 1993 game logic on modern hardware, often with enhancements. Level editors like Doom Builder let anyone design and playtest new maps. ACS and decorate scripting add custom behavior without touching the engine's source code. WADs are shared freely across community sites, keeping new content flowing for decades. Supports many workflows, single-player campaigns, deathmatch, cooperative play, total conversions. Works the same across nearly every platform a source code has been built for. Any questions? Thank you.